welcome to part 3 of my never-ending series, Hand Tool Restoration. Before I get started, a great deal of the information I spout in this video came from Eric von Schneidern at the Disston Institute website, so huge thanks goes to him, and an apology if I'm saying his name wrong. Welcome back to Master of None. This is an 8-inch Disston saw, and we can see from the etch that it indicates it is a number 5, which were produced for many decades in both the US and in Canada, starting over 100 years ago. Back then, they made 3 back saws, the numbers 4, 5, and 7, in even lengths between 8 and 18 inches. There were slight variations between them, with this one, the number 5, being the only one with a brass spine, which is what really caught my eye. Most of the number 5s were produced in Canada to avoid a tariff on saws sold into the British Commonwealth, and most were shipped to the UK. This one, however, its etch indicates it was made in Philadelphia and somehow wound up in the UK, where I got it from a seller just outside of Liverpool. After all these years, I guess you could say it's found its way home. So in today's exciting episode, I'm going to restore this as I usually do, to make it look like it's been wiped down with a baby diaper after every use, but keep the nicks and scars it has. And some of you know I have a thing for shiny brass, so some enthusiast will probably be upset with the amount of polish I plan to put on that spine, but I think I can live with their ire. Looking at this medallion, it has a big crack in it which runs down to the actual bolt, so I'll probably have to replace it. I'll still clean it up to get a better idea though. Everything else looks to be in decent shape. With the coating on the handle flaking off as it is, I'm taking a wild guess that it's sealed with shellac. Whatever it is, I'm going to strip it down to the bare wood, give it a light sanding with 320 grit, a coat of boiled linseed oil, and finish it with a coat of wax. And that's my preferred method of finishing a handle. To get things started, I'm using a dull card scraper to remove the coating, and that's for 2 reasons. First, I want to make my sandpaper last longer by removing a good portion of the coating, which would gum up the grit. And I also want to leave any deep nicks and scrapes that sandpaper might remove. One of the things I like about old hand tools is trying to figure out how old they really are. Obviously, there's not a whole lot to give it a specific date, but the stamp on the brass spine is from the early 20th century and remained in use until 1955, so that's not a great help. The medallion itself was produced between 1917 and 1940. This particular style of handle first appeared in 1918. Applewood was used until the 30s when it changed to beech. And I'm pretty sure this is applewood. I believe beech is a lighter wood than apple, although I'm not really good at figuring out the species of wood yet. It's suggested they stopped making the brass spine because of the brass needs of World War II, so I'm guessing this could have been made anywhere from 1918 to the mid-30s. My guess of this being a shellac coating is from the color of this dust that's coming off of it. It's yellow. I would expect if it was a polyurethane, it would probably be more clear or gray. Plus, if this is the original coating, they didn't have polyurethane back in the day, so I'm thinking that's not really an option. Of course, what do I know? I'm just spitballing here. After the initial sanding with 220, we popped the grain and sanded it with 320. And a word of advice to anyone that's going to refinish a wooden hand tool, sanding down to 320 is well worth it. It feels silky smooth and is just a joy to hold. Turning our attention to the brass, we'll start doing a basic cleaning with some simple green and an ultrasonic cleaner. And here's a top tip. If you're cleaning something small like these brass parts, you can drop everything in a zip-top bag and reduce the amount of cleaner you're using while still getting the full benefit of a full tank in the ultrasonic cleaner. All right, after a little agitation in simple grain and then a quick little scrub under water and a dry off, this is what we've got. But I think we can do a little better. We'll file down that edge so it's not so rough. We'll clean out the goop in the middle there. And we'll give these things a little polish. I first hit everything with the yellow polishing pad just to see where everything was, make sure I kept any of the deep scratches. Here I'm actually getting rid of the scratch marks from someone using the wrong screwdriver to clamp these down. And then I take it back to the yellow pad, then finish everything with a white pad for a good buffing. Turning my attention to the blade and the spine, I wanted to clean off whatever was coated on the blade, so I splashed it with some mineral spirits and gave it a good scrub. Here I'm removing the spine from the actual blade. I don't know if you noticed, but there was quite a buildup of whatever they had been covering the blade with, and I wanted to make sure I gave it a nice deep clean. So just had to knock that off, and you can see some of that gunk right there. So the blade itself will take a little overnight bath in evaporust. Turning my attention to the spine, I wanted to give it a little polish and just remove some of that tarnish first, so hit it with a good dose of Brasso here. Once I was all done, I knew there was going to be some Brasso in all the little crevices, so I used the ultrasonic cleaner to help. It did a good job, but it also showed me that a larger cleaner might just make an appearance on my Christmas wish list for Santa. Once I ran that for a couple of cycles to make sure everything is all clean, I took it over to the polishing pad. Once I couldn't go any further with the yellow pad, I swapped over to the white pad and gave it a little more shine. And that does it for the brass. So, with all of it done, it's time to turn our attention back to the blade, pull it out of the evaporust, and get this thing cleaned up. To clean up the blade, I'm going to start sanding it with 600 grit sandpaper. I don't want to use anything larger because that would introduce deeper, larger scratches into the blade and require me to spend a lot more time sanding them out, which is completely unnecessary. I don't want it to appear factory new. I want it to find a nice balance between having a patina and being silky smooth for swift cutting. Another reason I'm starting with 600 grit is that if I started with anything larger, there's risk that I would damage the etch, which I want to preserve as much as possible. After a couple minutes of sanding with the 600 grit, it's looking real good. And for those curious about etches and evaporust, you can see right there, there's no problems. Then we spend a few minutes giving it a buff and a polish, and it's ready to go. We'll clean that polishing material off with some mineral spirits And then it's time to hit it with some PB Blaster for protection. Alright, the brass is done and the blade is done, so now we get back to the handle. Here we're just going to pop the grain, which is just involving getting some water in there and letting it dry. Then we can hit it with some 220 again and finish it up with 320. With the sanding done, it's time to seal the handle, and I'm using boiled linseed oil cut with mineral spirits at a 2-to-1 ratio. The spirits help the oil seep deep into the grain for longer protection. This needs to sit overnight, and we'll give it yet another coat tomorrow.
The next day.
Well, lesson learned here. Do not use paper towels to apply boiled linseed oil. This just leaves little fibers that you got to go around and start cleaning off. Such a pain. Hopefully a rag will grab those. Alright, on to the waxing. And I actually like to use this Howard Wiedenfax. Wiedenfax? Not even close. Feed and wax. This is actually an old bottle. Its stuff lasts forever, but we're going to keep using it. Once done, this needs to sit about 20 minutes to harden, and then we just wipe off the excess. So now it's time for assembly, and I have a little bit of a challenge in front of me. I don't know if it'll pick it up on camera, but there's a slight line here which shows where the spine is on the blade. It's not perfectly flat, because then it would be sticking out over here for clearance of the handle. So it's angled, and I don't know how easy it would be to apply or attach the spine to the blade like this and then have room for the handle to get on. So I think what I have to do is attach the handle and then put this on, and maybe that'll do with it. I don't know. I think that'll do the trick. So let's give that a try. The medallion is squared here at the base, so we sort of have only 4 positions to choose from. I think I'll choose that one. Now you probably can't tell, but I've taken this little screwdriver and I filed off the tip just a little bit so that it fits inside these old screws, because a regular screwdriver isn't exactly suited for screwing these in. Spinning. Alright, well, that's not flush yet. Alright, there's a little play there, but I don't dare tighten that anymore. That's definitely cracking real good. And this one, or it's the yeah, it's spinning, so. All right, let's get that spine on. Hammering this in place was actually really easy. Now I just need to adjust the angle of that spine so that it fits inside the handle. And that proved to be the most challenging part of the whole install. And with that spine in place, it's time to sharpen and set the teeth. So sharpening the teeth is actually pretty easy to do, but you need to figure out what kind of saw you have in order to give it the proper sharpening. What I'm doing here is hitting every other tooth at an angle, not 90 degrees from the blade. This is known as fleam. The back saw should have anywhere from 20 to 30 degrees of fleam for each alternating tooth. This actually helps to clear out the sawdust as you're cutting. So that's one side done, and I'll flip it around and hit the other side. With all the teeth sharpened, it's now time to set the teeth. And this means that each alternating tooth flares out from the blade just a little to make the cut slightly wider than the blade, which reduces the friction as you cut. And to make it easier on the old eyes, I'm marking every other tooth, one side in red and the other in blue. To set the teeth, I'm using a saw set, which pinches the blade just below the tooth and bends the tooth over just a little, all in a single motion. This saw set was made by Disston and is around the same age as the saw, although dating these things is really difficult since they remained unchanged for a very long time. After they're set, it's time to give this thing a test. All right, there you have it, the inaugural cut of this 8-inch number 5 from Disston. I really like the way this turned out. The brass, it feels fantastic. It's nice and shiny, although it still has all of its nicks and scratches that I wanted to keep, show some of its age, and it's nice and pretty. So off camera, I got a new medallion. I made sure to get the exact same medallion so that we could still date this many years after I'm gone, and it's maybe gone back to Liverpool, who knows. But that was important for me. It's not just to get anything, but to get the exact same one. Now, as far as that test cut goes, you know, it is Purple Heart. It's a really dense, hard wood. So I'm not sure if I need to sharpen the teeth anymore. I'll probably give it 1 or 2 more goes just because I'm still not up to snuff on sharpening teeth. But never hurts to practice a little more. Either way, the cutting went really well. I think it did a fantastic job, and I am looking forward to using this in my next project, which I will share with you whenever I get around to that. Let me know your thoughts on what I did. I know a lot of purists out there would not make everything as shiny as I did. They'll pretty much just scrape the rust off and give it a coat of something and then throw it into production. That's not what I want. This is what I want. So let me know your thoughts, if this is something that you would do, or if I took it a little too over the top in your opinion. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you sticking around this long. If you liked what you saw, maybe head over to my channel, take a look at some of the other projects that I do. It's not just tool restoration. And who knows, you might like some of the other stuff I do and actually click that subscribe button and say thank you or leave a comment. Anyway, that's it for today. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.